The movie opens in a cold, rain-soaked city that feels as lifeless as the crimes within it. Detective William Somerset, a man just days away from retirement, has spent his life surrounded by darkness. But his final week on the force is about to be anything but peaceful. A new detective, David Mills, is transferred into the city with his wife, Tracy. David is young, hot-headed, and driven by a need to make a difference. Everything Somerset used to be. At home, things seem a little brighter. Tracy, who doesn't know anyone in the city, invites Somerset over for dinner. Despite the awkward start, they end up sharing a rare evening of warmth and laughter, a quiet moment in the middle of the storm. After dinner, Tracy and Somerset form a friendship of their own. One day, she confides in him a secret she hasn't even told her husband. She's pregnant, but she's terrified. She hates the noise, the violence, the soullessness of the city, and she doesn't know if bringing a child into this world is the right choice. Somerset, who's seen everything the city has to offer, gently tells her that if she decides to keep the baby, she'll have his full support, and if not, he'll keep her secret. While Tracy struggles with her own fears, her husband and Somerset are drawn into a nightmare. Their first case together is grotesque. An obese man is found dead, face down at his kitchen table, surrounded by piles of food. At first glance, it looks like a case of heart failure, until they notice something darker. The man's stomach has ruptured from overeating. A bucket filled with vomit sits under the table, and there are bruises on his head. Someone had held a gun to him, forcing him to eat until his body gave out. Somerset searches the filthy apartment and notices scratch marks on the floor, as if something heavy had been dragged. He moves the refrigerator and finds a single word scrawled behind it: gluttony. The message is clear. This wasn't just murder, it was punishment. Before they can even process what they've seen, another crime rocks the city. A high-profile defense attorney has been found dead in his office. His blood is smeared across the walls, and on the carpet, written in that same chilling style, is another word: greed. The lawyer was forced at gunpoint to carve out a pound of his own flesh, a twisted nod to Shakespeare's Merchant of Venice. When they show the photos to the lawyer's wife, she notices something odd. One of the paintings in his office was hung upside down. The detectives return, move the painting, and behind it, find bloody fingerprints, prints that don't belong to the victim. The forensics team runs them through the database and gets a hit. The prints belong to a known drug dealer and convicted pedophile. The killer had deliberately planted them. The lead takes the detectives to a decrepit apartment. The SWAT team breaks down the door, guns drawn, and what they find inside freezes them to the core. A man, skeletal and barely alive, is strapped to a filthy bed. His body is covered in sores and scars. He's been lying there for a year, kept alive through an IV drip, fed just enough to survive, pumped full of drugs. Nearby, the word sloth is painted on the wall. The killer had taken the drug dealer from the streets, mutilated him, and kept him as a living corpse. When forensics examines the victim, they discover his tongue has been chewed off. The horror deepens when Somerset finds a series of photographs documenting the man's slow decay, each one dated months apart. It's then they realize something horrifying. Those fingerprints found in the lawyer's office, they belonged to this man, long after he was already captured. The killer had severed his hand and used it to plant the evidence. This is no ordinary criminal. This is someone intelligent, methodical, and terrifyingly patient. Somerset begins to see a pattern. The murders correspond to the 7 deadly sins: gluttony, greed, sloth, and more yet to come. He spends his nights buried in books, studying theology and philosophy, trying to understand the mind behind these crimes. Through an unofficial contact at the FBI, he gets a list of people who've recently checked out books about the 7 deadly sins. One name stands out: John Doe. The detectives visit the address linked to that name. As they knock on the door, a man steps into the hallway carrying groceries. The moment he sees them, he pulls a gun and opens fire. A violent chase through the rain-soaked streets follows. Somerset loses sight of him, but Mills keeps pursuing, desperate to prove himself. John Doe outsmarts him, ambushing Mills in an alley and bashing him over the head with a metal bar. He holds a gun to Mills's face and then strangely spares him, disappearing into the shadows. Mills, bleeding and furious, insists they search Doe's apartment immediately. Somerset protests. They have no warrant, and their lead came from an illegal source. But Mills doesn't care. He pays a group of homeless people to give a fake statement that will justify the search. Inside John Doe's apartment, they find walls lined with notebooks, hundreds of them filled with endless writing. Thoughts, confessions, observations about sin, disgust, and punishment. Not a single fingerprint anywhere. Everything is perfectly clean. Among the twisted collection, they find photos of a young prostitute. She's likely the next victim. Just then the phone rings. Mills answers, and John Doe's calm voice cuts through the silence. He congratulates them for finding his home earlier than expected, but tells them he's already moved up his schedule. His next sins are already in motion. The next scene is pure horror. At a seedy motel, police discover the body of the prostitute. The crime is unspeakable. John forced a man at gunpoint to rape her, using a custom-made contraption from a bondage shop. The device was designed with a sharp metal blade, turning the act into murder. When the detectives find the terrified man, he's screaming and shaking uncontrollably, unable to process what he was forced to do. The word, lust, is written in blood nearby. Hours later, another victim appears, a beautiful model, her face slashed and mutilated beyond recognition. In one hand, a phone is glued, in the other a bottle of sleeping pills. John Doe gave her a choice, live disfigured or take the pills and die. She chose death. The word, pride, marks the wall beside her, 5 sins down, 2 to go. Then, the unthinkable happens. As Mills and Somerset return to the station, exhausted and defeated, a man walks into the lobby, covered in blood. He calmly says, "Detective, you're looking for me." It's John Doe. He turns himself in. His bloodied hands leave red streaks on the floor as he surrenders. But he has one condition. He'll confess to everything and lead them to his final 2 victims, but only if both detectives accompany him personally. If they refuse, he'll plead insanity and the evidence will crumble in court. Against Somerset's better judgment, Mills agrees. The next morning, under the burning sun, they drive deep into the desert. Doe sits calmly in the back seat, hands cuffed, speaking softly, almost like a preacher. He talks about sin, corruption, and how people have stopped caring about right and wrong. Somerset listens, uneasy. Mills, meanwhile, can barely contain his rage. Finally, they stop in the middle of nowhere. A delivery van pulls up out of the dust. The driver nervously says he was told to bring this package to Detective Mills. Somerset opens the box. What he sees drains all color from his face. He steps back, trembling, and shouts to Mills to stay where he is. John Doe turns to Mills, smiling slightly. He begins to talk about envy. He admits he was jealous of Mills' simple, happy life with his beautiful wife. And in his envy, he took what he wanted. He killed Tracy. Somerset is frozen. He doesn't want to say it out loud. Mills stares at him, demanding an answer. But Somerset's silence says everything. Then Doe adds one final, cruel revelation. Tracy was pregnant. She was going to have a child, something Mills didn't even know yet. And in her final moments, she begged for mercy. Mills's world collapses. He raises his gun, shaking. Somerset pleads with him to stop. If you shoot him, he wins. But Doe keeps taunting him, whispering, "Become wrath." And in a flash of rage, Mills pulls the trigger. John Doe falls dead. In that single moment, the killer's plan is complete. John Doe's 7 deadly sins are finished. He himself was envy, and Mills, by killing him, became wrath. The desert falls silent. Somerset watches as police lead Mills away, broken and hollow. The case is over, but the cost is unbearable.